some people it might seem as, we need to move on. We need to get a life, basically, and stop harking on about the past and how great he was, and just basically, for us to progress, we need to stop looking behind and start looking forward.
Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the message of the Holy Quran itself, on many occasions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks the Prophet and the new Muslim community to reflect on the stories of those who had come before them. Why? It's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us that, number one, history repeats itself. Number two, there are certain trends in history which everybody can learn from. And then when you take these together, you find that those personalities who have come before us, we try and make the historical become contemporary. So they may face situations which we face in our life, and we look to them as an example. And so when you look at someone like Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, I think any Muslim who says that we continue to hark on about this character or discuss him too much, you can never discuss Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam too much. The reason being that it's absolutely impossible for a person to encompass as many virtues as Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. As in whichever angle you take, there are so many lessons to be learned and so many examples to be derived from his life. So if we're just studying history per se, it's good, but the aim should be that we take the examples of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib's life and implement them into our own lives. Because there may be many who know much about the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But the Imam wanted them to say, don't just know about me, I want you to implement that which I implemented on the earth. And I'll never forget, the first example he gave was with his own son, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, when he told him that the heart of a youth is like an uncultivated piece of land. Whatever you throw on it, it accepts. Therefore, I tried to mold your heart before it hardened, so that you were able to learn from my lessons and apply them to your own life. If we are the sons of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam and the followers of Imam al-Hasan, we seek to take this example as well and try and somehow study this outstanding character in Islamic history.
Okay, thank you very much. We have our first caller. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Ahlulbayt TV.
Wa alaikum salam, brother.
Thank you very much for calling in. Your comment or question, please?
My question to Syed Ammar is that, when Imam Ali was hit by the sword, and he said, Fustum bi Rabbil Kaaba, and I can't understand that why he said that, because, martyrdom is something so common for them. And he has won in so many battles, but he never said Fustum in any of them. So what was he trying to actually say? Secondly, when he knew that he left the Muslim Ummah in such a turmoil, after him there were so many problems with Imam Hassan, why did he still say Fustum? That's my first question.
Okay.
I've got a total of 7 questions. How many am I allowed to ask, please?
I'm going to ask you to just give us 3 because, as you can appreciate, we're going to get a lot of phone calls this evening.
Sure. My second question is in his book, Nahj al-Balagha. Some of the sermons are, we can understand them. For example, Shafia. But other sermons are so hard, like the first sermon. Were these sermons just directed to the general public? If it was, were the public so intelligent to understand them? And what happened now? Why are we so dumb and we can't understand them? Or were these sermons just directed to a certain group of people, like, maybe some of the Sahabas, or were they held privately?
Sure. And the third question?
The third question to him is that, when he moved, everything was in Medina before.
Yes.
With the Prophet.
Yes.
And the hub of activity was Medina.
Yes.
Why did Imam Ali move his office to Kufa, which is so far away?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Nice question.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much. Hold on to the other 4, and then inshallah maybe you can call back on another night and we can slip them in somehow. Thank you. Okay, so the first question was his statement after he'd been struck by the sword. How
Sure.
do you say that?
Well, the statement, Fustu wa Rabb al-Kaaba, can be looked at in a number of ways. The first way it could be looked at was, like the sister was alluding to, the fact that all his life he was seeking to achieve martyrdom. Without a doubt, the sister is right in saying that it's common for Ahlulbayt to be martyrs. But the Imam on many occasions had asked the Prophet, when is the day I'm going to die as a martyr? every battle he would go in, he's thinking to himself, is this the day? Is this possibly the event I'm going to die in? And when he had finished his battles, he's thinking, well, I finished Nahrawan, Saffin, Jamal, I finished Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, and so on, and still I haven't been killed in battle. It's when he got struck by the sword that he realized that it wasn't on the battlefield that he was going to be killed. Rather, he was going to be killed off the battlefield, but still in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we say, do not count those who have died in the way of Allah as being dead. Rather, they are alive. And you find that he knew very well at that moment he had achieved martyrdom, and that was something he was yearning for all his life. Someone says, why is it that achieving martyrdom is something so outstanding? It's because you sacrificed and struggled with your life in order that the bigger message of Islam continued. You see, the Imam was showing that, you know what, all my life I've served this religion. And those people who oppose me, the only way they could finally end my life is behind my back. And now on the second point, Fustu wa Rabbil Kaaba, in my prayer. I have been victorious through the pillar of the religion of Islam. That the only time you could end my life is while I am in my prayer. And that highlights to us how much the Ahlulbayt valued their prayer, without a shadow of doubt. As in, it was a pillar for them, it was a base for their actions and their behavior in public. And you find that not only in his prayer, but in his sujood. The same action which Satan said, I will never do towards Adam. The same action which the magician said, we will do towards the Lord of Musa, becomes the same action in which Amir al-Mu'mineen loses his life. Where better would you want to die? Some would say, I want to die on the battlefield. But when you die in the position of prostration, a position which Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam used to state, if mankind knew how much reward they were receiving while in sujood, they would never lift their head from sujood. And Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is honored with losing his life in a state of sujood. So the concept of I've achieved victory can be looked at from two angles. In terms of the second question, about Nahj al-Balagha's sermons, you have, sister alluded to that in Sermon 3, Shaqshaqiyya, it seems more easy to understand, whereas Sermon 1, which is about Allah's attributes, seem less easy to understand. On the first level, the question is, are these sermons like Sermon number 1 in Nahj al-Balagha? Is it aimed just for the people or aimed for us until today? No, it's aimed for everybody until today. Indeed, much of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam's words, the people of the time who surrounded him weren't ready for. And you know the famous story, ask me before you lose me. And the person tells him, how many hairs do I have on my head? There were people who weren't ready for this type of language. So then there were people who weren't appreciating the Imam. What you find is only later on, when scholars of Arabic study the compilation of Sharif al-Radi in the Nahj, and when you find scholars of science and scholars of philosophy study it, they say this man is beyond any explanation and beyond the people who were surrounding him. I remember hearing a story that there was this Oxford professor, originally from Germany. In the mid-80s, he enters a class. And the class is made up of students from the Arab background, from the Middle East, Gulf states mainly.
Right.
And he enters and he's smiling. He's got this smile on his face. And you know that look of a professor where you're thinking, you know, mad professor, you know, why is he smiling? What's going on here? So they all started laughing. When they started laughing, they said to him, sir, you know, what's wrong with you? You're smiling today. He said, there's only one reason I'm smiling. They said to him, what is it? He said, you had Ali ibn Abi Talib amongst you, and you ended up fighting the man? If we, the Germans, had Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam amongst us, we would make sure that he would be a leader for us. So you find that that sermon number 1 is aimed so that 1,400 years after he said it, we are able to differentiate between who are normal, fallible humans, who are able to receive knowledge, and those who are inspired with gifts of knowledge. I think also on the second level, it's vital to understand. The sister said, it's easier for me, Shaqshaqiyya, but the first seems harder. Well, if you're a historian, Shaqshaqiyya is bound to be easier. Whereas if you're a philosopher, then sermon number 1 is going to be easier for you. So you find that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is a human being who appeals to people who have studied different fields. In one sermon, for example, you may have a sermon about a peacock. the person of biology, will look at him talking about the peacock. Why, when he compares the peacock to people who are arrogant but insecure. You may find someone in your life who's arrogant, and that's a sign of his insecurity or her insecurity. And Imam compares with the peacock. Now, 1,400 years ago, there's no study on, biology of the peacock. Whereas the Imam is saying that the peacock, when it spreads its feathers out, you're attracted to its beauty, whereas it's insecure about its skinny legs. So you got a sermon for science, a sermon for philosophy, a sermon for history. If a person today says, I don't understand sermon 1, then go and study the field of philosophy and then gain from Ali ibn Abi Talib. And if a person says, I don't understand the benefit of Shaqshaqiyya, then go and study your history, then you'll see the benefit of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam.
Thank you very much. And then the third question, which again was a very good question, was with regards to the shifting of the capital, I guess, from Medina to Kufa.
Sure.
When Medina was the religious hub is where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is buried. So
yes.
Why move it to Kufa?
Yes, the shifting of the capital is because you've got a clear threat from Bilad al-Sham and Muawiyah and Syria and Lebanon and Palestine and Jordan. So you definitely need to be in a more strategic position than Medina, somewhere in the middle where you're able to counter the forces.
Okay, thank you very much. So, with regards to the personality of Imam Ali alayhi salam, how does he rank in terms of conversion to Islam, in terms of those who converted to Islam?
Well, we in the school of Ahlulbayt believe Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam did not convert to Islam. He was born as a Muslim, and he was brought up in the cradle of revelation, because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi is not only the first person to have fed Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam with his own saliva after the Imam was born where? Born in the Holy Kaaba. The Holy Prophet is not the only one to have fed him first, but he brought him up as well, because Abu Talib had a bit of difficulty at the time in Arabia, and so different members of the family said, we'll look after his sons. And amongst those who looked after the sons, you had the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I'll bring up Imam Ali. And there's a 30-year age gap between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Imam Ali alayhi salam. And so you find that when the Prophet brings him up, he's going to make sure that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is not prostrating before any idol. That's 100% certain. And hence our brothers say, Ali ibn Abi Talib karramallah wajha, in contrast to other companions who people may say, radiyallah anhuma, or anhum. So you find that with the Imam did not convert to Islam. On the contrary, the Imam was born into the religion of Islam.
Okay, thank you. And as you know, or as we know, when the prophethood started, I won't say when he became a prophet, because in the same argument as what you've been given, he was a prophet from the beginning. But when the prophethood started, for the first 3 years, it was behind closed doors, if you like. And then there was the point where the prophet was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to invite his family members, his close family members. What was the role of Imam Ali alayhi salam during this particular time?
Well, the verse is mentioned within the Quran in Surah 26, verse 214, وَانذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you rightly said, He invites the family members first, and it really highlights that invitation towards religiosity begins at home and then spreads to the community. And so you find that He asks that all the main family members come, and of course you need people like Abu Lahab present, the uncle of both Rasulullah and Imam Ali alayhi salam. And when He invites them, it's Imam Ali He asks to prepare the feast. And when they all sit down, He then, of course, tells them that, if I were to tell you of an army that's coming, would you believe? Yes, we would. Then I tell you of a Lord, and I tell you of a day of judgment, and I tell you of equality. And He began to explain, the very principles of the religion. And it seems that he receives some mocking chants from the family members who are present, and the idea that he says, whoever accepts me as the leader of the people will be my caliph and representative after me. And the narrations say to us that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam